Priya had built walls around her heart so high that even she sometimes forgot what was trapped inside. She wasn't always like this. There was a time when she was a little girl who believed in forever, who thought families stayed together, and promises meant something. That was before her 12th birthday, before her father packed his bags one random Tuesday morning and walked out without looking back. She remembered standing at the window, watching his car disappear down the street, while her mother collapsed on the kitchen floor behind her. The sound of her mother's crying that day changed something fundamental in Priya. She made a silent promise to herself that she would never be that broken. Never give anyone that much power over her happiness. She became the strong one, the one who held everything together, while her mother struggled to pay bills and raise 2 kids alone. Priya learned to bury her feelings deep, to smile when things hurt, to never let anyone see her weak. Now, at 28, she had turned that survival instinct into a successful career. She was one of the youngest architects at Rahman and Associates, known for her brilliant designs and her ice-cold professionalism. Her colleagues respected her work but kept their distance. That was exactly how she wanted it. Work was safe. Buildings made sense. People were complicated and disappointing. Then Arjun walked into her life like he owned the place. He joined the firm as a structural engineer, and from day one, he was different. He had this easy confidence about him, the kind that came from someone comfortable in their own skin. While everyone else tiptoed around Priya's sharp edges, he just smiled at her like they were old friends. It started with small things. He'd bring her coffee during those endless late-night sessions when deadlines loomed. Not just any coffee, but exactly how she liked it: 2 sugars and extra cream. Even though she never told him, he remembered little details she mentioned in passing. Asked about her weekend plans. Noticed when she looked tired. It made her uncomfortable in ways she couldn't explain. Priya tried every trick she knew to keep him away. She was cold, dismissive, sometimes deliberately rude. She'd respond to his cheerful good mornings with barely a nod. When he offered to help with her projects, she'd tell him she worked better alone. But nothing seemed to discourage him. He never pushed, never got offended, just remained consistently kind in a way that felt almost aggressive in its gentleness. 3 months into his employment, their boss assigned them to collaborate on the biggest project of the year, a commercial complex that would define both their careers. Priya wanted to protest, to say she preferred working solo. But this wasn't the kind of opportunity you turned down. So she agreed, already planning how to maintain maximum distance while sharing the workload. Their first real work session happened on a Thursday evening. The office had emptied out. Just the 2 of them hunched over blueprints and computer screens. Arjun was explaining some structural concern, his voice patient and detailed, when Priya snapped at him for absolutely no reason. She told him his calculations were wrong, even though they weren't, her tone sharp enough to cut. He stopped mid-sentence and looked at her. Not with anger or hurt, but with something that looked uncomfortably like understanding. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken things. Then he said quietly, his eyes never leaving hers, "You don't have to be scared of me, Priya. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm just trying to work with you." Those words hit her like a physical blow. How did he see through her so easily? How did he know that underneath all her coldness was just fear, plain and simple? She felt something crack inside her chest, a tiny fracture in the walls she'd spent 16 years building. And she hated him for it. Hated how he made her feel exposed, vulnerable, seen in ways she'd promised herself she'd never be seen again. She gathered her things quickly, muttered something about finishing from home, and practically ran from the office. But as she drove through the city streets, hands gripping the steering wheel too tight, she couldn't stop thinking about the gentle certainty in his voice, about how he'd looked at her not with pity or frustration, but with a patience that suggested he was willing to wait as long as it took. That night, Priya lay awake, staring at her ceiling, disturbed by feelings she thought she'd buried for good. Something had shifted, and she wasn't sure she could push it back into place. The project forced them together daily. And despite her best efforts, Priya found the walls between them starting to crumble. Arjun had this way of being present without being pushy. He'd make her laugh with stupid engineering jokes, bring lunch when she forgot to eat, and somehow know exactly when to talk and when to just sit in comfortable silence. It terrified her how natural it felt. They fell into a rhythm. Morning coffee discussions about the project turned into conversations about everything else. He told her about growing up in a joint family where privacy was a luxury, about his love for old Hindi songs that his friends mocked him for. She found herself sharing small pieces of her own story, carefully edited versions that didn't reveal too much. But with Arjun, even those small pieces felt dangerously intimate. One evening in late October, Priya was reviewing designs when her phone rang. It was her mother, and the panic in her voice made Priya's blood run cold. Her younger brother Ravi had been in a motorcycle accident. He was at City Hospital. The doctors were still evaluating him. Priya's hands started shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. She grabbed her bag and keys, her mind spinning with worst-case scenarios. Ravi was only 22, still in college, still believed the world was good. He was the one person she'd let herself love without reservation, and the thought of losing him made her feel like she was drowning. She made it to the parking lot before the shock really hit. She stood by her car, keys in hand, trying to remember how to breathe. That's when Arjun found her. He'd worked late too, and one look at her face told him something was very wrong. What happened? His voice cut through the fog in her brain. My brother, accident, hospital. The words came out broken, disconnected. He didn't ask questions, just gently took the keys from her trembling hands. Let me drive you. You're in no state to be behind the wheel. She wanted to argue, to say she was fine, to maintain the pretense of control. But she wasn't fine, and they both knew it. So she let him guide her to the passenger seat. Let him drive through the city streets, while she sat frozen, trying to hold herself together. The hospital smell hit her the moment they walked through the doors. That mixture of disinfectant and fear that every hospital seems to carry. Her mother was in the waiting area, red-eyed and shaking. They held each other while a doctor explained that Ravi was stable but needed surgery. They'd know more in a few hours. Those hours felt like years. Priya sat in the uncomfortable plastic chair, her mother's head on her shoulder, while Arjun quietly handled everything else. He got them water, spoke to nurses, made calls to family members whose numbers Priya couldn't remember. He was just there, solid and steady, asking nothing in return. Around midnight, the surgeon came out with good news. The surgery went well. Ravi would recover fully. The relief hit Priya like a wave, and suddenly everything she'd been holding back came flooding out. Years of being strong, of never breaking, of carrying everyone else's pain while swallowing her own, it all crashed over her at once. She started crying. Not the quiet, dignified tears people cry in public, but deep, gasping sobs that shook her whole body. Instinctively, she pushed at Arjun's chest when he moved closer, still trying, even in her breakdown, to maintain some distance, to not need anyone, to be the strong one. But he didn't let her push him away. He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her with such certainty that it felt like the safest place in the world. One hand cradled her head against his chest while the other held her steady, and he just let her fall apart. I've got you, he whispered into her hair. You don't have to be strong right now. I've got you. And for the first time since she was 12 years old, Priya let someone hold her while she broke. She cried for her brother, for her mother, for the little girl who watched her father leave, for all the years she'd spent afraid to let anyone in. She cried until there were no tears left. And through it all, Arjun held her like she was something precious, like she belonged exactly where she was. When she finally pulled back, embarrassed and exhausted, he wiped her tears with his thumbs and smiled gently. Better? She nodded, unable to speak, unable to explain what had just shifted inside her. In that hospital waiting room, held against his chest while her world fell apart, Priya realized something terrifying and wonderful. She'd been waiting her whole life to feel this safe with someone. Recovery should have been simple. Ravi was healing well, back home and joking about his dramatic scar. Life returned to normal, or what passed for normal. But Priya couldn't forget what happened at the hospital. She couldn't forget how it felt to let herself be vulnerable, to be held without judgment, to need someone and have them actually be there. That terrified her more than anything. So she did what she always did when feelings got too real. She ran. Not physically, but emotionally, building those walls back up brick by brick. She started avoiding Arjun at work, communicating through emails even when he was 3 desks away. During meetings, she'd arrive late and leave early, never making eye contact. When he tried to talk to her about anything beyond the project, she'd shut him down with professional coldness that could freeze water. Arjun gave her space. But he didn't disappear. He'd still leave coffee on her desk, still smile when he passed her in the hallway, still treat her with the same gentle kindness that made her want to scream. Why couldn't he just get angry? Why couldn't he give up and make this easier? 2 weeks of this painful dance passed before he showed up at her apartment on a Saturday evening. She opened the door to find him standing there with takeout bags and a determined expression. "We need to talk," he said simply. "I'm busy." "No, you're not. You're hiding." "Let me in, Priya." She wanted to slam the door in his face, but something in his voice made her step aside. They sat at her small dining table, boxes of food between them, growing cold, while tension filled the air. She picked at her noodles, refusing to start a conversation she didn't want to have. Finally, Arjun set down his fork and looked at her. "You can keep running if that's what you need. But I want you to know something. I'm not going anywhere." "You should," she said, her voice harder than she felt. "This, whatever this is, it's a bad idea. I'm not good at this stuff." "At what stuff? Being human? Having feelings? At relationships? At letting people in? At not destroying good things?" The words tumbled out before she could stop them. "I'm damaged, Arjun. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be what you want me to be. I'll just end up hurting you." He was quiet for a long moment, studying her face like he was seeing something she couldn't. Then he said, "Maybe you will. Maybe this won't work out. But I'd rather be hurt by someone real than safe with someone pretending to be fine." "That's stupid." "Probably. But I spent 2 years being smart and safe and completely miserable, so I'm trying something different." That caught her attention. "What do you mean?" Arjun leaned back in his chair and sighed. "I was engaged once. Her name was Kavya. We dated for 3 years, planned a whole future together. Then she met someone else, someone with a bigger bank account and a fancier car. She left me a week before the wedding, just decided I wasn't enough." Priya felt her heart crack a little for him. "I'm sorry. Don't be. It hurt like hell. And for a long time, I shut everyone out. Built walls just like yours. Told myself it was safer that way. But walls don't protect you from pain, Priya. They just make you lonely." He reached across the table, not quite touching her hand but close enough that she felt the warmth. "I know what your walls look like because I built the same ones. And I know they feel necessary, like armor you can't take off. But they're also a prison." She pulled her hand back, wrapping her arms around herself. "So what? You think you can fix me? Make me into someone who believes in happy endings? No, I think you're not broken, so there's nothing to fix. You're just scared, and that's okay. But I need you to stop punishing me for your father's mistakes." That hit harder than she expected. "That's not fair, isn't it? Every time we get close, you push me away. You test me, wait for me to leave. Almost like you want me to prove you right. But I'm not him. Priya, I'm not leaving." She stood up abruptly, pacing her small living room. "You say that now. But everyone leaves eventually. People get tired. They find something better. They realize it's too much work." Arjun stood too, catching her wrist gently as she passed. Not to restrain her, just to stop her running for one moment. "Look at me." She did, reluctantly, and found his eyes full of something that looked like understanding mixed with frustration. "I see you," he said quietly. Not the perfect architect who has everything together. Not the ice queen everyone at work is afraid of. I see the girl who's been taking care of everyone else since she was 12, the one who never learned it's okay to need people, the one who's terrified that if she lets someone in, they'll leave and take pieces of her with them. He paused, his thumb tracing small circles on her wrist. I see all of that, and I'm still here. When will you start believing me? Priya felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she blinked them back. I don't know how. Then let me show you. One day at a time. No pressure, no expectations. Just stop pushing me away long enough to find out what this could be. She wanted to say yes. Wanted to be brave enough to take that risk. But fear was a powerful thing. And hers had deep roots. So she pulled her hand free and said, I need time. Okay, take your time. I'll be here when you're ready. After he left, Priya sat in her empty apartment and let herself cry. Not from sadness, but from the terrifying possibility that maybe, just maybe, someone could actually stay. Time didn't make things clearer. It just made everything more complicated. Because despite her fears, despite her walls, despite every logical reason to keep her distance, Priya found herself falling for Arjun in ways that felt both inevitable and terrifying. It happened slowly, in moments she didn't see coming. Like when he stayed late to help her meet a deadline. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. Or when he brought her favorite snacks after remembering a casual comment she'd made weeks ago. Or the way he'd defend her ideas in meetings, not to win her favor but because he genuinely believed in her vision. They started spending time together outside of work. Saturday morning coffee became their thing, sitting in a corner cafe while she talked about her childhood, and he listened like every word mattered. They'd take long walks through the city, her showing him buildings she loved while he pointed out the engineering that made them stand. They'd cook dinner at her apartment, him making her laugh with stories about his chaotic family while she slowly learned to relax in his presence. But old habits are hard to break, and fear doesn't disappear just because you want it to. Every time they got closer, every time she felt herself softening, Priya would panic and sabotage it. She'd pick fights over nothing, disappear for days without explanation, say cruel things designed to hurt him before he could hurt her. Like the time he mentioned meeting her family, and she accused him of moving too fast, of trying to control her life, or when he bought her a small gift for her birthday, and she told him she didn't need his pity, or the evening he tried to hold her hand while they walked, and she pulled away like his touch burned. Arjun was patient, almost impossibly so, but everyone has their limits. It happened on a Tuesday evening. After what should have been a nice dinner. They'd been seeing each other for 4 months. And things had been good. Really good. Then, during dessert, Arjun mentioned wanting to plan a weekend trip together. Something about the way he said it, the casualness that suggested a future, triggered every alarm in Priya's system. Why? She asked, her voice suddenly cold. Why what? Why do you even bother? Is this fun for you? Trying to fix the broken girl? He put down his fork, confusion crossing his face. Where is this coming from? I'm serious. You could be with anyone. Someone normal. Someone who doesn't come with a manual on how to navigate their trauma. So why waste your time on me? Is it because you feel sorry for me? Because I don't need your pity, Arjun. His jaw tightened, hurt flashing in his eyes. You know that's not why. Do I? Because from where I'm sitting, this looks a lot like a charity project. You get to feel good about yourself for being patient with the damaged architect. Right? It makes you feel noble. That crossed a line, and they both knew it. Arjun stood up, pulling out his wallet to pay the bill. I think we should call it a night. Running away? That's what everyone does eventually. He stopped, turned back to look at her with an expression she'd never seen before. Not anger exactly, but something close. Frustration mixed with exhaustion. You're right, Priya. Everyone does leave. But maybe, just maybe, it's because you make it impossible for them to stay. The words hit like a slap, mostly because they were true. She felt panic rising in her chest, that familiar fear that she'd finally pushed him too far. Part of her wanted to apologize, to take it all back. But a bigger part, The scared part. Wanted to finish what she started. Fine. Leave then. Prove me right. She stood to walk away, to end this before he could. But Arjun caught her wrist. Not gently this time, but firmly, stopping her in her tracks. No, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Not this time. You don't get to push me away and then act like I'm the one giving up. She tried to pull free, but he held firm, pulling her closer instead. Stop it. Stop running every time you get scared. Let me go, she said, but her voice cracked. No, not until you hear me. His other hand came up to cup her face, forcing her to look at him. I'm not your father, Priya. I'm not leaving because things got hard. I'm not going to wake up one day and decide you're too much work. When will you believe that? Tears started falling before she could stop them. You will. Everyone does. I'm too much. Too broken. Too difficult. You're scared, he said, softer now. And angry. And hurt by things that happened when you were too young to protect yourself. But you're not too much. You're not broken. You're just human. She fought against his hold, listing every flaw she could think of, every reason he should leave, every way she'd mess this up. She told him about her nightmares, her trust issues, how she sometimes went days without feeling anything. She laid out every ugly truth, waiting for him to finally see her clearly and walk away. He listened to all of it. Every word, every confession, every desperate attempt to make him give up. When she finally ran out of reasons, exhausted and crying, he pulled her into his arms. I know all of that, he said against her hair. I see all of you, Priya, the scared parts and the strong parts and everything in between. And I'm still here. I'm still choosing you. Every single day, I'm choosing you. She collapsed against him then, finally stopping her fight. I don't know how to believe that. Then let me prove it. Stop testing me and let me prove it. They stood there in the middle of the restaurant, her crying into his shirt while he held her steady. Other diners probably stared, but neither of them cared. This was the moment, the one where everything either fell apart or somehow came together. When she finally pulled back, eyes red and face blotchy, he wiped her tears and said, Can we try this again? Dinner? The weekend trip? All of it? But this time, can you try trusting me instead of waiting for me to leave? She nodded, unable to speak, terrified and hopeful in equal measure. I'll try. I can't promise I won't mess up again. I'm not asking for perfect, I'm just asking for honest. Deal? Deal. As they walked out of the restaurant, his arm around her shoulders, Priya realized something important. She was still scared. Probably always would be. But for the first time, she was more scared of losing him than of letting him in. That had to count for something. 6 months passed. And they weren't always easy ones. Priya still had bad days when the old fears crept back in. When she'd feel the urge to push him away before he could leave. But she was learning. Learning that love wasn't about being perfect or fearless. It was about choosing to stay even when staying felt scary. It was about letting someone see your mess, and trusting they wouldn't use it against you. Arjun was patient through all of it, but he also held her accountable. When she started pulling away, he'd call her on it gently, but firmly. When she picked fights, he'd refuse to engage until she was ready to talk about what was really bothering her. He showed her through actions, not just words, that staying was a choice he made every day. They fell into a comfortable rhythm. Mornings started with his terrible coffee and her complaints about it. Evenings ended with them cooking together, him telling stories that made her laugh while she quietly learned what home was supposed to feel like. He met her family, won her mother over with his respectfulness, and made her brother laugh with engineering jokes only they understood. She met his chaotic joint family and survived the interrogation of 5 aunts who all had opinions about when they should get married. That word, marriage, used to make her break out in cold sweat. Now it just made her nervous, which felt like progress. They'd been together almost a year when he brought it up seriously for the first time. It was an ordinary Tuesday evening. They were in her apartment, cooking dinner like they did most nights. Nothing special, nothing fancy, just pasta and conversation. Arjun was stirring the sauce when he suddenly turned off the stove and looked at her. "Marry me," he said. Just like that. No fanfare, no planned speech. Priya nearly dropped the colander of pasta she was holding. "What? Marry me," he repeated, calmer than she felt. "Not because everything's perfect or because you're ready or because it's the right time according to some timeline, but because I love you. All of you. The walls, the fears, the bad days, and the good ones. I love you, and I want to spend my life proving to you that I'm not going anywhere." Her hands started shaking. This was it. The thing she'd been terrified of since the beginning. Permanent. Forever. Words that made promises her father couldn't keep. "Arjun, I know you're scared," he said, taking the colander from her hands and setting it down. "I know this goes against everything you've told yourself since you were 12. But I also know you love me. I see it in the way you remember my coffee order, in how you send me articles about buildings you think I'd find interesting, in the way you let me hold you when you have nightmares. You love me, Priya. The question is whether you're brave enough to let yourself have this." She thought about running. Old Priya would have run. Would have found a reason why this was a terrible idea. Why marriage was outdated. Why they should wait. But new Priya, the one who'd been learning to trust for almost a year, made a different choice. She walked into his arms and said, "Yes." He pulled back to look at her, like he needed to make sure he heard right. "Yes, yes, but I need you to know something." She took a breath, steadying herself. "I'm going to have bad days. Days when I get scared and want to push you away. Days when I can't believe you're really staying. Days when the little girl who watched her father leave takes over and tries to sabotage everything good in my life. I know. And you're okay with that?" He cupped her face in his hands, looking at her with such certainty that it made her want to cry. "Priya, I'm not signing up for the easy version of you. I'm signing up for all of it. The messy parts, the scared parts, the parts that still don't quite trust that this is real. I want all of it. All of you. Exactly as you are." She kissed him then, trying to pour into that kiss everything she couldn't say. "Thank you for staying. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for not giving up when I gave you every reason to." Later that night, lying in bed with his arms wrapped around her, Priya stared at the ceiling and thought about how far she'd come. She wasn't fixed, wasn't magically healed of all her fears and traumas. She still had walls, still had days when trusting felt impossible. But she'd learned something important over the past year. Belonging to someone didn't mean losing yourself. It didn't mean becoming weak or dependent, or the broken thing her mother had been. It meant being brave enough to be found. It meant letting someone see your darkness and trusting they wouldn't leave you in it. It meant believing that maybe, just maybe, not everyone leaves. Arjun shifted beside her, pulling her closer even in his sleep. And she felt something settle in her chest. That restless fear that had lived there for 16 years finally quieted, replaced by something that felt suspiciously like peace. She wasn't that 12-year-old girl anymore, watching her father's car disappear down the street. She wasn't her mother, broken by love and unable to recover. She was Priya, an architect who built beautiful things, a woman who'd learned that real strength wasn't about never needing anyone. Real strength was admitting you needed someone and letting them in anyway. She turned in his arms, studying his sleeping face in the dim light. This man who'd waited patiently while she fought her demons, who'd refused to leave even when she'd given him every reason to, who'd held her like she belonged to him until she finally believed she did. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness, knowing he couldn't hear, but needing to say it anyway. "Thank you for not giving up on me." He stirred, not quite awake but aware enough to pull her closer and murmur, "Never giving up. You're stuck with me." She smiled against his chest, and for the first time in her life, being stuck with someone sounded exactly like freedom. She'd spent so long running from connection, building walls to protect herself from pain. But Arjun had shown her something better. He'd shown her that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop pushing people away and start holding on instead. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy. She knew that. There would be fights and fears and moments when the old panic returned. But she also knew that she wouldn't face them alone. She'd found someone who didn't just promise to stay, he proved it every single day. And maybe that was what love really was. Not the fairy tale version where everything was perfect, but the real version where someone saw your mess and chose you anyway. Where staying was a choice made daily, not a given. Where holding someone didn't mean trapping them, it meant giving them a safe place to land. Priya closed her eyes, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breathing, and let herself drift off to sleep. Tomorrow, she'd wake up beside him, and probably feel that familiar flicker of fear, but she'd also feel his arms around her, reminding her that some people actually keep their promises. That not all love ends in leaving. That sometimes, if you're brave enough, you get to keep the good things. She'd tried so hard to push him away, but he'd held her like she belonged to him. And somehow, in learning to belong to him, she'd finally learned to belong to herself too.